My older sister always longed for the scenarios in those storybooks where a young noblewoman falls for a poor scholar. On the very day of her grand wedding to the Prince of Qi, she actually eloped with one such scholar. With no other choice, my stepmother made me take her place. The Prince of Qi's heart was always set on my sister, promising to let me go once the real bride returned. I was sensible enough to drink that contraceptive decoction every night, always mindful of my status, until 3 years later, when I discovered I had accidentally become pregnant. In my terror, I overheard that the prince had found my sister. I immediately faked my death to be sensible. Later, on a boat heading south, the Prince of Qi stared at me with a dark, gloomy face. "My lady, have you ever seen the princess who ran away from me?" "Madam, this is terrible. The eldest young lady has run off with someone." My stepmother spat out a mouthful of tea. "What did you say?" The maid cried as she pulled out a storybook. "The eldest young lady has been reading this book lately. Who would have thought she'd actually run off with that poor scholar last night?" My father snatched the book away. The bossy young lady's greatest love, pampered by a gentle scholar. Seeing the title, he fainted from rage right on the spot. The household was plunged into absolute chaos. My stepmother swayed on her feet. The nanny beside her hurried to steady her. "Madam, the urgent matter now is how to answer to the Prince of Qi." Upon hearing this, my stepmother gritted her teeth and forced herself to stay conscious. A pair of sharp, piercing eyes shot toward me as I sat there cracking melon seeds and watching the show. Although she looked utterly unwilling, my stepmother still rushed over to me in a few strides. She grabbed my hands and wailed in a most wretched manner. "Wanwan, has mother not always been good to you?" "Average." My stepmother choked but continued. "Is your sister not close to you?" "Truly average." My stepmother choked again. "Now is the time for you to repay the family." Those two questions of yours were entirely redundant. Rumor has it the Prince of Qi kills without blinking. If he found out the daughter of the Su family had fled and that they had sent a concubine-born daughter to fool him, he would likely behead me first. My stepmother's plan was simply to use my life to appease the prince's fury. "Don't worry, from now on you will be a legitimate daughter of the house." My stepmother was gritting her teeth so hard they nearly shattered. "Your mother can be entered into the family genealogy and receive offerings." "I understand. Even if I refused today, I would just be tied up and thrown into the bridal sedan chair." I had no choice but to nod. Wearing my stepsister's gold-threaded shoe silk bridal gown, accompanied by the sound of my stepmother coughing up blood in frustration. With drums and music playing, I entered the Prince of Qi's residence. Gu Shen wasn't as fierce or cruel as the rumors claimed. Back at home, I only got to eat if I obeyed my stepsister, and only once a day at that. Sometimes, if my stepsister was in a bad mood, I'd get whipped too. Luckily, she didn't have much strength, so I didn't have many scars. Only after being punished could I hope to get a full meal the next day, not to mention ever receiving any allowance. Despite being from a noble family, I could only wear the clothes my stepsister had discarded, all because my stepmother viewed my birth mother as a thorn in her side. After marrying in, Gu Shen didn't have time to monitor what I ate. I ate balanced and nutritious meals every day, and even grew quite a bit taller. Gu Shen ran his household with strict discipline. The servants didn't dare to act high and mighty. Apart from being tossed around every night, life was remarkably comfortable. I snuggled into Gu Shen's arms, rubbed against his neck, and buttered him up. "My prince, you are so mighty." I never forgot that I was here on a job I'd been paid for. I had to make sure Gu Shen felt he got his money's worth. Gu Shen curled his lips and patted my head. The set of solid gold head ornaments I ordered should be finished in a few days. My eyes lit up instantly. "My prince, you are the best." Look at that. The Prince of Qi, with his sharp intellect and cunning mind, couldn't even resist these sweet tactics. I hugged Gu Shen's neck and rubbed against him, unable to help but sigh to myself. How wonderful it would be if I could live like this forever. My financier was generous and kept busy. Just as I was lying comfortably in bed, a maid stood by the head of the bed holding a bowl of dark medicinal soup. My heart skipped a beat, and I snapped to reality instantly. I hurriedly crawled up, took the bowl, and downed it without leaving a single drop. Every day after our intimacy, Gu Shen would have me drink a concoction to prevent pregnancy. Not only did Gu Shen forbid me from bearing his children, I know full well that I absolutely cannot have one. I am merely a substitute for when my elder sister is away. On our wedding night, I confessed the truth about the replacement marriage to Gu Shen. I had been so dizzy with hunger that I spent the journey wondering how to deceive him and find a way to escape. It was only after I was full that I realized that those paths were simply not viable. Although Gu Shen does not interfere with the imperial court now, he had been fighting alongside the late emperor since he was 13, and he is the new emperor's own uncle, who personally helped put the new emperor on the throne. Lying would certainly not work. One lie will only lead to countless others. After thinking it over, the only way to survive is to be honest. Gu Shen said nothing, and I didn't know if I would survive his fury. I was so nervous that a thin layer of cold sweat broke out on my back. A long while passed. I heard Gu Shen's cold voice sound from above. I will send men to find your sister. Until then, you will temporarily take the place of the princess. I was deeply grateful for a face that looked 5 parts like my sister's. I will work like an ox or a horse to repay your kindness. That won't be necessary. I conscientiously stood up to help Gu Shen change his clothes, and then retreated to the daybed in the outer room. Rest assured, my lord, I will act like a servant from now on, and will never be an eyesore to you. I really am a clever little thing. Who knew that just as I was about to leave, I felt a tightening around my waist, and was yanked back by Gu Shen. On our wedding night, you want to let the servants laugh at me. I stiffened in place. That will cost extra. Gu Shen continued, once your sister is found, I will give you a generous sum of silver as compensation. Do not covet anything else that does not belong to you. Very well, your highness, no problem at all, your highness. I swiftly scrubbed myself clean. Gu Shen curled the corner of his lips, and looking back, he saw the bed curtains covered in peanut, longan, and melon seed shells. The servants in this mansion are becoming less and less disciplined. They're even greedy enough to steal the longans, peanuts, and seeds meant for the bed ritual. They only left the shells behind. There isn't even a single red date. We must investigate this strictly tomorrow. Who exactly is bold enough to do this? He turned his head back and saw sunflower seed husks hanging right off my lips. My sleeves were stuffed with red dates that should have been on the bed. I gave a dry laugh. As expected of the prince's estate, even the quality of the bedding decorations is exceptional. Gu Shen's eyes were filled with complex emotions. I had actually made preparations for 2 possible outcomes. I'd be a well-fed ghost if I were killed, and if I were kicked out, I could tough it out for a few days. I never imagined I'd just bluff my way through it, knowing I was in the wrong. I served my financier with extra diligence that night. For these past 3 years, I have kept to my duties, serving him with all my heart. I've drunk every last drop of the contraceptive brew. When my elder sister returns in the future, if she sees that a mere substitute has a child, she'll likely find a way to get rid of us. And the best ending for me would be to be sent away. I cannot protect a child. Even if he survived, I wouldn't want him to grow up the way I did. Seeing me finish the medicine obediently, Gu Shen took out a plump gold ingot as a reward and placed it in my hand. My eyes lit up. If 1 bowl of medicine can be traded for a gold ingot, I'm not bragging, but I could keep drinking this forever. You little miser, your small chest must be nearly full by now, right? I felt a flash of wariness. How does he know about my treasure chest? I flashed a fawning smile at the man in front of me, then lay back down and hugged Gu Shen's waist, acting like a spoiled child. Gu Shen's breathing faltered. He patted my waist. Lie still and be good. I obediently scooted toward the inner side and laid flat. Since I am so sensible and Gu Shen is so wealthy, once Gu Shen finds my elder sister in the future, I must insist on a generous sum of money to secure my retirement. I need to head out of the city and will return in 3 days. Though sleepy, I maintained my professional dedication. Take care of yourself, your highness. I will miss you. Gu Shen stroked my hair absently, remaining silent until I fell asleep shortly after. 3 days later, Gu Shen returned to the estate. Early in the morning, I brought the pure soup Xiao Tao had simmered to the study to find him, hoping to swindle him into giving me 2 more gold bars. I was just about to knock when I heard voices from inside. How is Su Qingrou? My head buzzed. My fingers gripped the tray, so hard my knuckles turned white. My heart sank inch by inch. My elder sister has returned. I felt as if I'd fallen into an ice hole. In an instant, I was back in those years when I had to fight just to survive under her thumb. Father doted on her and looked at me with disdain. After my mother passed away, my sister forced me to kneel as punishment for stealing a bite of food. I went hungry for 3 whole days. She even trampled my mother's spirit tablet underfoot to humiliate me. The man who has shared my bed for 3 years has been looking for her all this time. Shadow One's voice sounded. The eldest Miss Su has returned to the SU household, and the scholar. We didn't see him. Keep watching them. I didn't go in. I turned around and headed back to my courtyard. So, he left the city because he had news of my sister. He went to find her. He even sent Shadow One to escort her back. Back when I returned to my maiden home to retrieve my mother's spirit tablet, he only sent Shadow 13 to protect me in secret. As expected, she really is his untouchable white moonlight. I must prepare early. Luckily, my new novel, The Prince's Runaway Beloved Concubine, finally finished. This book, based on Prince Qi and my sister, has earned me a small fortune. Just as I was calculating how much I had saved, a wave of nausea washed over me. I was startled and reflected on the past few days. At first, I didn't have much of an appetite, and lately I've been feeling unusually drowsy. I thought it was just the lethargy of spring, but I have always been very careful regarding such matters. After Gu Shen left the house, I secretly had Xiao Tao bring a female doctor from the next county. While waiting, I fell asleep on the daybed under the window again. In my dream, Gu Shen stared coldly at me as I knelt on the floor. You dared to get pregnant in secret. This prince's child should only be born by Qingrou. My sister suddenly stepped out from behind him, clinging coyly to Shen Yu's shoulder. She looked at me with a gaze full of contempt and triumph. Gu Shen, clutching his long-lost older sister, looked down at me coldly as I knelt on the floor. Since you have occupied Qingrou's place for 2 years, it is only right that you owe her this. His tone was ice-cold, making my heart shiver with dread. In consideration of your service to me, drink this abortifacient and get out immediately. I stared at the black medicinal broth, feeling its bitterness sink deep into my soul. But then I thought of my treasure chest, so I took the medicine and kowtowed. I'll leave right now, I'm going. Just as I was about to turn away, my older sister suddenly spoke up. Put down the chest in your hands. That was given to me by Ah Shen. This one is for you. Gu Shen looked at her with such doting affection, even placing my golden crown upon her head. Hearing this, she turned and mocked me with a sneer. Guards forced the medicine down her throat, then cast her out of the estate. No sooner had he finished speaking than 2 burly men entered. They were Gu Shen's personal guards. They grabbed my chin, forcing my head up, and poured the bitter black dregs into my mouth. Once the medicine was down, they hauled me up by my arms and dragged me out. I watched my treasure chest drift further and further away, my heart feeling as though it were being crushed and twisted. The 2 men tossed me out at the front gate. Outside, the snow was falling heavily, and I was wearing nothing but a thin garment my sister had discarded. I shivered violently from the cold. Gu Shen hadn't given me a single copper coin. A moment later, the gates opened again. It was the same 2 men, dragging out Xiao Tao, who was covered in blood. This woman stole valuables from the manor, and has been executed by our princess on the spot. I felt the blood in my veins turn to ice. I cradled Xiao Tao in the swirling snow and wailed, Xiao Tao, I was wrong. I shouldn't have craved things that didn't belong to me. I will never do it again. Please wake up, Xiao Tao, Xiao Tao. I bolted awake to see Xiao Tao's face looming over me, looking at me with concern. Miss, I'm right here. I reached out to touch Xiao Tao's face. It was still warm. Xiao Tao reached out and wiped the tears from my face. Did you have a nightmare, miss? The female physician arrived just then. Miss, let her have a look. After checking my pulse, the physician bowed to me. It is a pregnancy pulse. It felt like being struck by lightning. Although I had already suspected it, I was still clinging to a sliver of hope. Recalling the scenes from my dream, I felt a chill seep deep into my bones. Of all times, it had to be now. Fortunately, I have saved up quite a bit of money over these past 2 years. Buying a small courtyard in a distant village would be enough for Xiao Tao and me to live securely for the rest of our lives. I counted the jewelry Gu Shen had given me again. Most were gold, along with a few gemstones. I won't be able to keep these later, but I can sell them now. To be safe, I still need to save as much as I can. That evening, Gu Shen returned. The moment he entered, he swept me up into his arms. He walked with long strides toward the bed. I had already prepared for this. I had applied pale makeup to look weak and pushed him away. I'm not feeling very well. Gu Shen frowned, clearly displeased. Have you summoned the manor doctor? He started to get up to call for someone. I quickly said, it is just my monthly time. Gu Shen understood then. As he lay beside me that night, he suddenly asked out of the blue, I heard you brought in a woman from the next county. My heart sank. Yes. Xiao Tao heard she knew how to blend pear-scented incense, so she begged me to invite her to teach her. She wasn't here for even an hour before I sent her away. My heart felt incredibly heavy. He really does know everything. Xiao Tao lacked the patience and couldn't learn it. I just bought the finished incense and sent the woman off. A woman's illness is difficult to speak of. That was the excuse used for the physician's visit. That is what we tell everyone. I felt the little life inside me still barely formed, and tested the waters. I heard Secretary Lu's mistress is pregnant again, and he wants to bring her home. His wife is causing quite a scene though. Sigh. His wife's family has a lot of power. If she truly refuses to allow it, that child will likely end up a bastard. Gu Shen pressed his ear against mine and gave a soft hum. He didn't state his opinion. I became even more uncertain of his intentions, and continued to probe. What would you do, my lord, if you had an illegitimate child? Gu Shen remained silent for a long time. Just as I thought he wouldn't answer, he spoke slowly. I will not have any illegitimate children. Why not? Gu Shen patted me, his voice sounding heavy with sleep. By getting rid of the mother, there will be no child. I didn't respond. I just lay there with my eyes open, motionless in his arms, until dawn, when I finally drifted off. I had thought about it for a long time last night. If Gu Shen had a shred of conscience, he would give me money and let me leave. But given my elder sister's temperament, knowing I've taken her place these past 2 years, and enjoyed the status that was hers, would she try to kill me? Besides, I am now carrying a secret that would surely lead to death. Looking at Xiao Tao nearby, her face all greasy from eating a chicken leg, I knew I couldn't just sit and wait for my fate. I have to find a respectable way out for myself. Before Gu Shen decides to cast me aside, I wouldn't dare dream of a formal divorce. But I could die of illness, which would be better for Gu Shen's reputation. As long as I slip away before my sister makes her move, none of the things from my dreams will come to pass. I packed all my belongings and personally prepared a feast, intending to beg for his grace and leave overnight. But Gu Shen didn't return that night. The maid came to report that His Highness has been invited by Magistrate Su. Tell the princess that she needn't wait and that she should retire early. Indeed, my elder sister has returned. Naturally, Gu Shen would want to keep her company. I sat alone in my room, motionless, all night. Early the next morning, I changed into men's clothing and snuck out of the estate. I went to pawn all my jewelry. I converted all my gold and silver into portable banknotes. That was when I heard people on the street gossiping that the Su family was going to hold a wedding. The only one in the Su family without a spouse is my sister, who just returned. It goes without saying who this wedding is for. Coupling that with Gu Shen staying at the Su estate all night, I suppressed the wave of nausea rising within me. I had a vague feeling last night that this matter might not end well. As expected, plans cannot keep up with changing circumstances. Early the next morning, I received an invitation from my sister to meet and talk. Holding the invitation, my heart sank completely to the bottom. My sister has always been ruthless. Sending this invitation now makes me fear that this is a one-way trip. As long as I am dead, she can rightfully marry Gu Shen. Gu Shen went to the palace early this morning. He likely went to make her position official. Su Qingrou asked to meet at the city's largest restaurant. This is clearly a trap. I will absolutely not go. I took a look from a distance. She sat by the window, the large round table before her filled with delicacies. It seems she hasn't had such luxuries in the last 2 years. Her hands were stroking a book repeatedly. On it were gold-stamped characters. The prince's runaway beloved concubine. Ever since I learned my sister loved reading romance novels, I had the idea to weave a dream for her. 3 years ago, the novel I wrote, my overbearing lady's favorite, pampered by a gentle scholar, was all the rage in the capital. In stories about scholars and noble ladies, the scholar wouldn't let the lady do a lick of work. He would not only compose poetry but also hunt in the mountains, working 8 days worth of labor into one, and he had plenty of energy at night. Eventually, he passed the imperial exam and was given a position of importance. The heroine also took fierce revenge on all those women who had looked down on her. Looking at the roughness on Su Qingrou's face that she just can't hide, and those chapped hands of hers, even though she is wearing silk and finery, she can no longer carry herself with the poise of a young lady of stature. Su Qingrou, I wonder if the beautiful dream I wove for you is treating you well. Before I left, I naturally left a grand gift for my stepmother as well. That book, The Untold Affairs of the Lady and the Stable Hand, must have gone on sale today. With the reputation I've built up over these years, it is sure to be sold out the moment it hits the shelves. Little Dao and I packed my savings and changed into coarse cloth clothes. Under the cover of night, I set the house ablaze. The Princess of Qi died in a fire. I even came up with the reason myself. How thoughtful of me. I boarded the carriage I'd already prepared with little Dao. I just wanted to survive. And as for my older sister and Gu Shen, they only wanted me to relinquish the position of Princess of Qi in a way that seemed legitimate. Although this fire won't fool Gu Shen, it's enough. I burned away everything that had to do with being the Princess of Qi. I only took my treasure chest with me. Little Dao and I disguised ourselves as men and boarded a cargo ship heading south. I stood in the cabin, watching the bustling capital fade into the distance. If all goes well, I will never return here again in this lifetime. The ship traveled very quickly. Along the way, I saw people living in peace and prosperity. Gu Shen's name carries great weight among the common folk, very different from the rumors of him being cruel and heartless in the capital. I suffered from seasickness and morning sickness, tortured beyond belief. Fortunately, I met a kind young man on the ship who was quite helpful to us. In my misery, I don't know how it happened, but I dreamt of the first time I ever saw Gu Shen. 3 years ago, in early spring, my older sister had read in a novel about a scholar falling in love at first sight with a young lady while she was flying a kite, and she insisted on going to the riverbank for a spring outing. When she flew her kite, she demanded that I get it into the air for her first. There was no wind. My older sister and her maid sat in the shade, maid, drinking tea. I was already half-starved. I felt dizzy and lightheaded from all the running. And yet, this was but a fraction of the ways my sister tortured me in daily life. Just as I was about to collapse from exhaustion, the kite finally took flight. When I went to take it to my sister, I saw that her eyes were brimming with affection, fixed upon a man on a pleasure boat out on the river. There were 5 or 6 men standing by that boat, laughing and making suggestive remarks toward us. Only one man, dressed in rough cloth, spoke up to stop them. The ones making the jokes were all sons of noble families, so none of them thought much of him. The man's face flushed red, and he bowed from afar to apologize to my sister. That man was the scholar my sister would eventually elope with. Behind the others, the only one sitting and drinking tea was Prince Gu Shen, so it wasn't just the scholar who had set his sights on my sister back then. This must have been the moment Gu Shen fell for her at first sight as well. After I woke up and recalled the scene from my dream, I was violently ill and threw up again. We happened to be arriving at the port. Xiao Tao and I wanted to disembark to stretch our legs. But before we could even get off, a group of soldiers boarded the ship. After the soldiers stood guard all over the deck, another group of men in black swords at their waists came aboard. I recognized them instantly as men from the Prince Qi estate. Leading them was Ying Yi, Gu Shen's own shadow guard. I pulled Xiao Tao into a narrow gap in the cargo hold, holding my breath as shallowly as possible. I thought to myself that this was bad. Is Gu Shen refusing to let me go? Or did my sister use his authority to send them after me? I had served Gu Shen well enough these past 3 years. And even if he felt nothing for me, he should have at least valued my discretion and left me a path to survive. If it was my sister who sent them, then I was truly doomed. The cabin was deathly silent. Xiao Tao and I covered our mouths, huddling into ourselves. With a creak, the cabin door opened. Light, cautious footsteps entered. They began looking around. Xiao Tao was trembling with nerves. I gently pressed my hand on her shoulder to soothe her. The footsteps grew closer. They stopped just on the other side of the wooden crate we were behind. I stared fixedly at that shadow on the floor. The shadow suddenly took a step forward. I held my breath. Just when I thought we were about to be discovered, the shadow suddenly stepped back. The footsteps gradually faded away. As the door slammed shut, Xiao Tao and I both collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. I was just about to get up to check the situation when a pair of large hands pressed me down from behind. I almost screamed out loud. Turning back, I saw the young man who had been looking after us poking his head out. I had been frightened one shock after another, but fortunately it was just a false alarm. The young man signaled for us to stay quiet. They are still searching outside. Don't make a sound for now. I'll get you two out of here later. I nodded. The 3 of us sat huddled together in wait, following a shout from the deck. We all let out a collective sigh of relief. We had made it through this hurdle. When I stood up after crouching for so long, my vision blurred. I nearly tumbled over. Luckily, someone beside me held me steady. With a bang, the cabin door swung open again. I struggled to open my eyes, looking at the person walking into the room against the light. My blood ran cold in an instant. Gu Shen's icy gaze was fixed directly on me. Have you held on to each other long enough? I hurriedly pulled myself out of the young man's arms. Finding his arms empty, the young man stepped forward to block me. With the bravado of a newborn calf unafraid of a tiger. As a high-ranking prince, how can you have the face to force a woman? Gu Shen's expression was dark enough to drip ink. Before he could finish, several men came in from outside, covered the young man's mouth, and hauled him away. They quickly exited. Ying Yi also came in and dragged Xiao Tao away. Xiao Tao was terrified, completely helpless to resist. The cabin fell into a sudden, deathly silence. Only the smell of grain lingered in the air. Gu Shen walked slowly toward me. Every step felt as if he were treading upon my heart. He finally stopped just a step away from me. Tell me, my lady, have you seen the princess who ran away from my estate? I hung my head, not daring to look at him. Then I was taken back to Gu Shen's ship. We sailed back in the direction we came from. I was locked inside my room. Gu Shen only returned in the evening. I asked with a trembling voice, "Where is Xiao Tao?" I only heard a cold sneer from above. "You should be worrying about yourself instead." Before I knew it, the world began to spin. Gu Shen scooped me up and placed me on the daybed. Gu Shen pressed his lips down onto mine, biting me hard. "Wanwan, why did you run?" I gritted my teeth and refused to answer, pushing him away while asking, "What about Xiao Tao?" Gu Shen seemed to reach the end of his patience. "For that fool earlier, you'd learn to elope? You are a married woman." He grew more agitated as he spoke, his eyes turning red. Seeing me cower, Gu Shen closed his eyes, sensing that he didn't seem to want to kill me. I mustered the courage and slowly reached out, patting his back twice. Gu Shen's gaze darkened, and the next second, he gripped my neck and kissed me again. Just as he tried to loosen my sash, I suddenly sobered up and blocked his hands at once. His face was flushed, his eyes filled with frustration. He tried to continue, but I refused again. After a few rounds, we both sat on the edge of the bed, gasping for air. Gu Shen looked at me, wrapped up in the quilt, bundled into a long tube, and let out a frustrated laugh. He reached out to the side, and my treasure chest was suddenly in his hands. My eyes turned sharp. I reached out to snatch it back, but Gu Shen dodged me while flipping through it. "What fine things you have here. These are mine now." I could have ground my back teeth to dust. It didn't just contain the things he'd given me. The money I'd earned from selling my storybooks was in there too. My hard-earned savings. I bit my lip hard. I collapsed back onto the bed, heart hollow. All my money was gone. It didn't look like Gu Shen was going to let me leave either. Either he intends to torment me to vent his anger, or he is entertaining the idea of keeping both of us. What chance does a body double have against the white moonlight? Whichever it is, I am destined to suffer. If I had known, I should have acted more poorly these past 3 years, just to make Gu Shen lose interest in me. Maybe then he would have let me go by now. The next day, I still hadn't seen Xiao Tao. The seasickness had me retching until I was half dead. Surprisingly, Gu Shen insisted on taking care of me himself, and even allowed me to step off the ship to get some ground under my feet, and go to the apothecary to buy medicine. When Qingrou isn't around, he is truly good to me. That is exactly why it will be so painful when I leave. I feigned embarrassment as I pushed Gu Shen out of the apothecary door. He didn't force the issue. The entire apothecary was already surrounded anyway. The doctor checked my pulse. "Your health was never properly cared for in your youth, madam. Your body isn't fit for pregnancy, which is why your reaction is so severe. If you try to force an abortion, it will likely damage your foundation. It will be difficult for you to conceive in the future." I headed back, clutching my motion sickness medicine. On the way back, I even heard the sequel to my book, The Untold Tales of the Lady and the Stable Boy. I heard Minister Su's wife was involved with a stable boy long before she was married. I heard that when she married, she even brought that stable boy with her into the husband's household. I heard Minister Su's eldest daughter was born prematurely. Is that for real? Even the emperor has rebuked Minister Su for his lax household morals. How could this be false? The truth about my stepmother and that stable boy was something I happened to discover by accident. I have no evidence, but as long as everyone believes it, my father will certainly investigate it thoroughly. Once he finds even the slightest trace, my paranoid father will surely be convinced. Even without hard evidence, he will nail my stepmother to a pillar of shame, just like she did to my mother back then. She claimed my mother was seducing a fishmonger. She said she was worried such a scandal would ruin the family's reputation, so she had her locked in the courtyard and beaten with a wooden rod. Beaten to death. Afraid of implicating me, my mother shook her head at me before she died. She kept silently telling me to stay safe. I must pay her back 1,000 times over. She loves to falsely accuse concubines who have fallen out of favor of having affairs with men outside. Then she has them executed within the household. Now, my stepmother should have a taste of that same treatment. The only difference is that my mother was framed, while she is actually guilty. Lying in bed that night, listening to the sound of water outside the window, I reached a decision. I am so sorry, but to save my own life, I cannot keep this little one in my womb. What I am thinking is actually quite simple. If Qingrou wants to take revenge on me, I'll just fight her to the death. If I truly can't escape, I can die. But how could I stand by and watch my child be murdered right in front of me? Just as I was pouring the medicine into the teacup, the door was pushed open with a bang. Gu Shen's eyes were bright, looking straight at me. Then he looked down at the abortion medicine in my hand, and the light in his eyes vanished entirely. He knocked the medicine to the floor in one motion, then gripped my shoulders tightly. His eyes were filled with hurt and grievance. "Why run away? Why don't you want our child?" I turned my head away, my nose stinging. "It's not that I don't want it, it's that you only want Qingrou." Gu Shen froze, as if he realized something. He helped me sit on the couch, his eyes fixed intently upon me. "Wanwan, are you jealous? This isn't just about jealousy. If you like Qingrou, then I have to die. I just want to live." Gu Shen had never seen me cry before. Now, seeing my tears falling drop by drop, he knelt before me in a panic, anxiously explaining, "I do not like Qingrou. I haven't even seen her face clearly. This time, I was the one who was shocked. That spring when you were flying a kite, I saw you at first glance. When I went to your father to propose marriage, he told me you were the Su family's legitimate daughter, Qingrou. I had Shadow One secretly send you some things, only to find that your father had lied. and I found out how Qingrou treated you. That's why I had that poor scholar approach her, to trick her into eloping. Didn't you notice the wedding dress was made to your measurements? You were so thin back then, just skin and bones. You said that when she returned, I would have to give up my place. That I shouldn't covet what doesn't belong to me. Gu Shen tapped me on the head. Did you think I didn't know you planned to run away the next day? You didn't know me, and you didn't believe I could love you. I had to give you a reason to stay. But even after 2 years, I still haven't won your heart. With things laid out this plainly, I continued my questioning. You said you were going to inspect the salt, but you were actually going to find Qingrou, and you even had Shadow 1 watch over her. When I returned home to visit my parents, only Shadow 13 was there. She found her way back on her own. I was having her watched, to ensure she would never get close to you again. The scholar was already on his way to take her back at that time. Qingrou isn't coming back. I had people keep an eye on her, to make sure she never sets foot in the capital again. My tears fell uncontrollably. I choked out my next words. You even made me drink contraceptive medicine. Gu Shen reached out to wipe away my tears, but they just kept coming faster. Your health wasn't properly taken care of when you were young. That wasn't just to prevent pregnancy. It was also medicine to help nourish your body. Over these last 2 years, I've finally helped you put on a little weight. I was planning to nurture your health for 2 more years, before we had children. I remembered the doctor in the small town saying my health was poor, that I shouldn't get pregnant right now. There now. Now let's talk about that abortion medicine you wanted to take. I felt a pang of guilt, and that boy you were planning to elope with on the boat. I quietly turned my head away. You even burned all your things in the prince's estate. I buried my head in his chest and retorted in a muffled voice. You were the one who said you'd take care of the illegitimate child's mother. Gu Shen gently pushed me away. He looked me straight in the eyes. Wanwan, you are my wife. When you're pregnant, you should happily tell me we're expecting a child. Instead of asking me how I'll deal with an illegitimate child, I was at a loss for words. I have never been loved, so naturally, I don't know how to love someone else. I looked into his eyes. They were filled with nothing but tenderness. Gu Shen leaned in slowly toward me. Just as he was about to kiss me, Xiao Tao's crying suddenly rang out from outside the door. Your Highness, no, please don't. Please. Think of the child in my mistress's womb. That is your own flesh and blood. If you must vent your anger, your highness, take my life instead. Mistress, I have been loyal to the end. Xiao Tao pushed the door open and rushed in, only to find me and Gu Shen sitting perfectly fine on the bed. Gu Shen's arm was still draped around me. Xiao Tao didn't pause a second, and turned right back around to dash out without missing a beat. Shadow 13 covered his face in his hands outside the door, and thoughtfully pulled the door shut for her. I felt awkward. You didn't kill Xiao Tao. You treat that little maid of yours like a sister. You even made sure to take her with you when you faked your death to escape. If I had scared her, wouldn't you have fought me to the death? I truly had thought she had already been disposed of by him, and had even planned out how I would take my revenge. But I certainly couldn't say that out loud. I hugged Gu Shen, feeling a bit guilty. Gu Shen held me tight in his embrace. Wanwan, I will only ever have you as my woman in this lifetime. I didn't say a word. That is a difficult thing to do. I couldn't bring myself to believe it. His voice suddenly turned dangerous. What is the meaning of your silence? Or is it that you still have someone else in your heart? After all, you did run off to elope with another man. It took a great deal of effort to finally appease this petty man. But for the decades to follow, whenever we had a fight, Gu Shen would bring up this old debt. As for whether he was in my heart, I told him I would answer that when we reached 80. Upon returning to the capital, the Prince Qi's mansion had been rebuilt. I heard my stepmother was very ill. My father had sent her to a rural estate outside the city. I even went to see her and brought her news of how Qingrou was doing. I'm truly kind-hearted. Father was held accountable by the imperial censors. He was accused of several crimes, including taking lives recklessly and forming partisan cliques. Falling from the clouds is far more painful than just dying. He will soon discover that because of his cold-hearted selfishness, not even his own kin are willing to lend him a hand. I still love hoarding my treasure chest. It is just that Gu Shen checks if my treasure chest is still there every morning and night. Latter, he specifically assigned Shadow 1 to keep an eye on my treasure chest. As long as the chest is here, I won't leave. I only found out later that his shadow guards are ranked in reverse order. Shadow 13 is actually the top-ranked one. I successfully gave birth to a pair of twins, a boy and a girl. 2 months later, I was pinned onto the bed by Gu Shen. The overdue lesson had finally arrived. Gu Shen did indeed fulfill his promise. In this lifetime, he only had me. Of course, this matter was something I didn't confirm until I was 80.